Zootopia is a 2016 animated Disney film. To be honest, I think it's kinda trash. Zootopia is rated pretty highly on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, so I assume I'm nearly alone in my beliefs, so feel free to tell me why I'm a dumb idiot whose arguments make no sense. Maybe I'll learn something. But before I get into the stuff I don't like, I'll mention a few things that I actually did like. And essentially it boils down to the production value of this movie was pretty fucking crazy. It's some of the best 3D models I've ever seen and some of the best animation I've ever seen. And in 2016, honestly, it was probably the best in the world at that time. Even like the audio design and editing is pretty crazy. I distinctly remember a scene where there's like some paper was being torn, and I remember even that sounded like amazing. Some of the world building and action stuff is pretty nice too, you know, seeing how all these different sized animals live in the same world and have to have like slightly different things made for them so it all makes sense. Like that kind of stuff is pretty cool, and like I said, some of the action set pieces are pretty fun as well. And Disney has some of the greatest talent in the world for this kind of stuff, as well as the money to fund it, so it shouldn't be a surprise, but hey, credit where credit is due. For stuff I don't like, when it tries to get into subjects such as racism, it just doesn't make sense. Like, none of the allegories make sense, or at best, they're confusing as fuck. What's funny is that this movie fumbles around with this too, like it just fumbles it. One moment it will tell you that it's wrong to have prejudice against animals or to assume all of an animal type have a certain behavior, but then in the next moment, for comedic purposes, the movie will show that those animals do have those behaviors. Examples being how sloths are slow and how wolves howl. It's like the movie is saying that not all Asian people know Kung Fu, but then anytime it shows an Asian person they are doing Kung Fu or struggling against the instinct to do Kung Fu. In the movie, the prey animals, which are the majority population, hold inner fears about the predators, which are a minority. So, you know, if you take this in like a North American look, like maybe these prey animals represent white people, and predators maybe represent black people, and these white people have unjust opinions about these black people. And like, okay, that sounds kind of right, but then at the same time, off the bat, you're portraying black people as hulking beasts that have a natural instinct towards harming the calm white people. And that's a fucked up thing to say. Like, you might as well be Tucker Carlson if that's how you're going to portray things. And what makes it weirder is that in the world of Zootopia, there's like a long documented history of how the predators used to go around killing the prey animals. And so it kind of makes sense why the prey animals would be a little bit scared of the predators. The predators actually do have claws and teeth and weapons that are always available to them. You know, they have a long history and real threats that come from these animals that are actually potentially dangerous to them. But if we're going to try and now figure out what this means in a human context, is that saying that like black people are actually very dangerous? You know, they have a long history of being very dangerous, and you know, white people are right to be afraid of them. That just doesn't make any sense. What I think it comes down to is using a bunch of different animals to represent human beings and human conflicts just never makes sense. It didn't make sense in Zootopia, and it didn't make sense in that one furry anime there. Different anime have different traits. Different animals have different traits. Humans are one kind of animal, and thus humans share the vast majority of their traits, which is a main component to why racism doesn't make sense in the real world. But in the context of animals, different animals have different traits. It's not racist to say that sloths are slow, that wolves howl, that foxes dig burrows, that humans walk on two legs. These things aren't racist to say. They are factual in 99% of cases, so it's confusing when the movie tries to tell you that's racist to think that dogs bark. Attaching a more mild gripe to that, it's a bit wonky to portray eating meat as evil. It's a mild gripe because I get that this film universe follows its own rules, but IRL, creatures like alligators, lions, and snakes have to eat meat to survive. It's not a question of choice. Plus, they've been doing it for longer than our arbitrary notions of good and evil have even existed, so who are we to judge? Without these predators, population control would be completely out of whack, which would lead to an ecological disaster in one form or another. But let's move on. Jason Bateman plays a fox in this, but he mostly just plays a Jason Bateman. He's such an annoying character. The movie stops in its tracks a few times so that he can preach about how bad the world is for like 10 minutes at a time, and it's so painfully boring to sit through every time that happens. In the theater I saw the film, there were kids literally getting restless because of how boring this movie was. The bunny will usually try and turn his views around, and sometimes it works, and the fox does change his perspective, but as I complained about earlier, it's not like either of their views make full sense, or rather the fox's views probably made more sense considering what happens in the movie. This movie also has some poor choices in its soundtrack. For some reason, they thought it would be a good idea to get Shakira to record some painfully bland, inspirational sounding music. Then they'd just play entire 3-minute tracks of it at points. I'm usually not too attuned to the music in movies I'm watching, and as long as it's serviceable, I'd never even notice, but the crappy Shakira songs stand out so much that they made me wince. The Fox rants and musical interludes really killed the pace of the movie for me, making the whole experience lackluster by the end. Then over time, the more and more I thought about the movie, the less I liked it. But hey, if you're someone who doesn't really engage with the content you watch, you're bound to be enraptured by all the pretty colors and cute animals, making it an easy 10 on 10. Would recommend.
Next time on Dragon Ball Z.
I don't actually know what I'm doing, I'm just kind of making this all up. So I guess leave a suggestion, leave a like if you want. Peace.